Primitive Plus, a complete and total rework of Ark Survival Evolved as you know it. So many things are different. So many things are taken away from you to make the game much more challenging. There's no polymer, which means you can't make scuba gear. You can't make shotguns. The most powerful weapon that you have is a musket. I'm going to take on the challenge of a 100-day journey through the island, trying to beat all 3 bosses on Gamma, and then take on the tech cave. So, thanks for joining us, and let's go ahead and get started with the challenge. So as I spawned in on the island for day 1, I decided to spawn as close as possible to Herbivore Island to get myself away from dinos that'll want to kill me right away as I walk around and get things started. Unfortunately, it didn't start exactly how I had planned. Yeah. So, we got killed by a capro to start, so we took a chance, spawned in again, and let's try this one more time. So after spawning back in, it was a little bit farther down the beach, and it made it a little more safe to not get eaten by a capro for a second time. So I did what every other beach bob does. We started gathering fiber, gathering plants, punching trees, learning engrams, and making clothing, also making us our first stone pick and our first stone hatchet to get started, and gathering resources to get a raft in order to be able to get to Herbivore Island as quickly as possible. So I found a few locals to the beach here and decided to kill them off to start gathering the hide that I would need to make the raft, because I know the amount of hide to make the raft is pretty heavy. After that, I found a rock, made myself a mortar and pestle, and also made some thatch foundations to kind of get the process started to making narcotics so we could start taming dinos as quickly as humanly possible, as well as getting my first full set of armor, as awful as cloth can be. Found a beach, put our thatch foundations down. I tried to put it as close to the water as humanly possible because I know I could at least put the raft up against it and board it a little easier. And once I found my first parasaur, whipped out my bola, made sure there was no Dilophosaurs around to give us problems, whipped out the club, and got started. Unfortunately, all I had was a wooden club to get started. I didn't have trank arrows as of yet, so we had to whack and whack and whack and whack and whack and whack and whack away. Unfortunately, the club broke, but luckily, my fist was enough to knock out the parasaur, tame it up, get our first saddle, and get our first dino rolling. After taking my parasaur around, we pulled the wood off of it from bashing a few trees, and we had enough to craft the raft. We plopped it in the ocean and got our parasaur on the raft and had to position it just right so we could hop off, throw down a few sleeping bags, and begin our journey towards Herbivore Island, but not after hiding the sail. It's always something I like to do. And then the journey began. One of the things that I was very concerned about heading towards Herb Island was getting hit by a lead, but fortunately for me, that did not happen, so we slid the raft up to the beach to Herb Island and decided to name our first dino, and we named it Berry Lady. Berry Lady proved to be a worthy companion in this 100-day endeavor. After we gathered around the island a little bit, we put our first refining forge down, started to smelt up enough to make our first smithy. Now the smithy in Prim Plus is a little different. You can see it even looks a little more primitive. And there's metal is not exactly the same in Prim Plus as well. You actually have to forge 2 different types, but you can see iron is what you get to start with, and then you use carbon to make steel. So Iron was our first one to grab. We took Berry Lady out, got some of that metal, put enough of it into the forge to get us our first crossbow as well as our first metal pick, so we could start to gather resources at a much better pace. And now, armed with the crossbow, we found our first Pteranodon on the island, and a level 50 was good enough for me to start with. So we bowled it up, armed ourselves with our trank arrow, gave it a shot, and that was the end of it. While that tamed up, we started throwing down a few more foundations just to get ourselves a little bit of space to work. That Pteranodon decided to come visit and say hi, but we got our Pteranodon rolling, brought it back to base, and then decided to take the raft out to try to find some more resources, and effectively beached it. Couldn't get it out, so I had to pick up our sleeping bag and unfortunately destroy our raft in favor of a new one. But we built another one and set sail to the west side of the island and actually found ourselves a very high level 140 Pteranodon, knocked it out, and while it tamed, we took our new raft and began the process of building our tame boat. So the tame boat became something that was extremely important for the 100-day challenges. I could use it to trap dinos. I could also use it to get around the island with resources and eventually be able to transport dinos to wherever I needed them for boss fights. So as we got started building, you can see here we got our foundations down, and the thing I like to do on my rafts is actually put a hatch frame right here. The reason why is as you swim up underneath the raft, if you're out in the middle of the ocean and you have to swim up to your raft, you can actually swim up and get onto the raft a little easier with the hatch frame because it's not covered up by a foundation. After placing the wooden ramps on the raft, we would be complete. The ramps will serve as a way to get the dinos on. We put on all the little accoutrements, mortar and pestle, storage box, the whole bit. Try to throw some sleeping bags on there as well, just to make sure if we died we had a little bit of a respawn point. The beds are bugged, so it's tough to use anything but a sleeping bag. You can't use a hammock. We then traveled back to Green Knob, threw down a foundation of mortar and pestle, and searched out a Diplocaulus. Now the Diplocaulus usually is on the edge of the swamp, so sometimes it's extremely difficult to actually tame one. We did find one right on the edge of the swamp by Green Knob and knocked it out. The reason why it's so difficult to tame is it's such a weak dino, and usually there's snakes, there's capros, there's all kinds of swamp dinos around to be able to take it out. We found a level 5, so obviously it got knocked out pretty quickly. So we sat on a rock and fed it what it needed to be tamed, got it tamed up, and then used our Pteranodon, which can carry dinos, but the smallest of dinos, picked him up, and began the march back to Herbivore Island with our Diplocaulus. Looks a little weird when a Pteranodon's carrying it, but I promise you that it can pick up a dino of that size. Dropped our Diplocaulus back at our little shanty at Herbivore Island. And once you ride it, it will breathe for you, or at least you can breathe while you're on it underwater. So it does take the place of a scuba tank in a way. So it did give us a way to be able to do some of the underwater caves. After that, we jumped off here and found a nice Anki sitting just off the side of the beach here at Herbivore Island, and we just peppered it with trank arrows and knocked it out, so we had another way to get iron. Then our next challenge was to find an Argentavis, so we took our Pteranodon over to Carno Island, and right on the edge of this beach here, we got busy dropping down a trap with dino gateways, 2 dino gates. Popped them together, put the doors on, and made sure that the doors opened out. And then trapped an Argentavis, knocked it out. Went and grabbed raw meat. We had the taming obviously turned up for this challenge. Threw some meat in inventory and tamed it up. We returned back to the tame boat and got ourselves a doe-ed, tamed it up as well in the tame boat and brought it back to base. And then we took off on a journey. We needed to move our base of operations to the north side of the island. The reason why is we wanted dire wolves, we wanted Uties, so we began the trek all the way up the side of the island all the way to the north. When I arrived, I pulled up the tame boat just to the edge here, just to the edge of the water, just to see if we can get a megatherium in the trap, which proved to be a little more challenging than you think, because they are a bigger dino. But once we got it in there, we knocked it out, tamed it up, and then went back for a few dire wolves, because we knew taking them into the caves would probably be a good idea. So this was a pretty high level dino that we knocked out. And there was actually a lower level one next to it as well. And we took the risk of moving the boat away from the shore. Generally, when a dino's knocked out in a boat like this, it'll actually glitch it out, but worked out pretty well and named our dire wolf Caver. And as you can tell, the little shanty's coming across pretty nicely. We have the Caver, our doe-ed. We pretty much brought everybody we could. Berry Lady came with us as well. And we tamed a megaloceros for its thatch gathering ability, but also for later on, and we'll show that later. Went to the hidden lake to try and find some cementing paste and came across a decent level Theri. Theris is what we were going to use for the megapithecus and for the dragon. Knocked it out, threw some berries in its inventory, and just kind of waited around for it to tame up and brought it back to base. With some base dinos now being tamed, we built a dinghy, which is a small version, it's kind of the predecessor to the canoe, threw Caver on there and headed out to get our first artifact, and that is the artifact of the hunter on the south side of the island. We brought a Dimorphodon with us just in case we got into trouble, but it was pretty easy getting it through, as the direwolf at a level 200 was pretty powerful. Took out this spider that was near it, and I tried to run around just to make sure that there were no snakes in the wall that knocked me out right when I was getting the artifact, which would have been extremely frustrating. When we hopped off, grabbed the artifact, and headed out of the cave. Once we returned to base, we had enough resources to finally build the Prim Plus version of the Industrial Forge. This runs on coal, and that's a little bit harder to get. But once we had the Industrial Forge, we've also built the Alchemy Table, which is the Prim Plus version of the Chemistry Bench, the Industrial Grill, and the Smokehouse. And the Smokehouse is basically the refrigerator. It runs on spark powder, so it does keep things in a little longer, or at least decreases the spoil timers. Once we brought some Megatheriums back, it was time to get breeding. So we started breeding our Megatheriums here, and then found ourselves a high-level Sabertooth on Carno Island. And this Sabertooth would be another one of our cave dinos, because it can actually take a saddle. After taming this Megatherium, we did go in and get the artifact from the center cave. Unfortunately, the video bugged out, so I can't show it to you, but we did tame this Megatherium, and then we went on search of a Quetzal. This is kind of the old school way to do the Quetzal, because we didn't really have net projectiles to use or anything like that, so we hop off of the RG, deploy the parachute, grapple to the RG, and then you can actually whistle the Argentavis around and shoot the Quetzal with trank arrows. It's extremely difficult to control. The parachute does help in a way, because you may bounce around a little bit, but it actually helps out a lot to kind of keep you steady when you shoot. This process took a very long time because there's so many missed shots. This was actually overnight that we tried to tame this Quetzal. The reason why we tamed the Quetzal is because there are no cryopods. So in order to be able to transport dinos to the obelisks for all these boss fights, we needed a Quetzal with a platform. So finally, in the morning of the next day, we finally knocked out the Quetzal. It landed, we filled it up, and tamed it, and brought it back to base. Once back at base, we started to imprint on some of our megatheriums and get them going. And then we took the saber tooth that we had to go grab the artifact of the massive. This proved to be extremely difficult as there were bats and bats and bats and bats and more bats. So I had to take them on with a sword because the saber tooth couldn't necessarily reach them with its bite. Every corner we turned at, there were more and more dinos. Sabertooth hung in there really, really well. And as we got closer to the artifact, the dinos just kept on coming. But then, due to the level of the Sabertooth, it did a really good job of getting through a lot of these dinos. So after we cleared it out, the artifact of the massive was in view, so we just grappled over, grabbed the artifact, and then grappled our way back and jumped on the Sabertooth to head back out of the cave. The cave for the artifact of massive has a few jumps in it that are difficult, but we were near the end and I felt like we were in pretty good shape. All we had was one more jump left to go, and yeah, Sabertooth didn't quite make it. But we were able to grapple out really quickly. Now the Sabertooth obviously didn't make it out, but we were able to save it with the grapple hooks that we had and at least get ourselves to safety. After throwing on a few med brews and kind of getting a gauge of where we were at, I was able to grapple my way back up, cut the line, throw one more, at least get us up and to safety, and then run back out of the cave with the artifact. We brought all of our megatheriums to Greenob, and then actually started breeding them here at Greenob, as opposed to trying to breed them and take them all over. There's the Quetzal with the platform on it to bring the dinos over, and we started breeding up babies. These weren't high levels, but I also wanted to get, by day 30, the boss fight done. So we let our megatheriums grow up right there at Greenob, put a trough off to the side. Then we went out in search of a Yudi. Got lucky with this Yudi, because a 150 Carno made its way in as well, and we tamed that. Wasn't a very high level Yudi, but we were able to get it into the trap on the north side of the island, throw it in, and we named it TT because I kept hitting the transfer key over and over. But we used our Quetzal to transport it back to base. Then we built a trap over by our base because we knew we could get direwolves there and daeodons, as well as a few megatheriums if they snuck their way into the trap. But we wanted to try to at least bring a low-level Daeodon to give the Megatheriums a chance to heal while they were within the boss fight. Otherwise, it was pretty much guaranteed they were going to die fairly quickly. The reason why we chose Megatheriums for the boss fight is because of their ability to get a boost when they kill bugs. So we had our Megatheriums close to day 30 at Juvenile. We knew by the time that the boss fight came around, they would be grown up and ready to go. And we tried to imprint them as much as we possibly could. So on day 30, we had the artifacts that we needed, and we put our Daeodon on passive heal, threw the artifacts into the terminal, and jumped into the boss fight. With the bug boost, I felt fairly confident that we could get the fight done, but these were lower level Megatheriums. We didn't necessarily have time to go search around for days on end to try and find high level dinos, but they did get off to a pretty good start, and I made the mistake with my Yudi. The Daeodon unfortunately made it in, went in first and died quickly. I went around the back to try and get every dino buffed, and it got webbed by all the small spiders in there. I tried to make my way back out, but I was just webbed to death. So the Yudi, unfortunately, I gave it one last roar before it perished, and I had to hop off extremely quickly, jump on a Megatherium, and continue the fight. And as you can see, while the Megatheriums are doing decent damage, my Megatherium was getting beat up. And this is when we started to lose dinos. So I decided to take my Megatherium off the main path there, whip out my musket, which is the best weapon we had, and it did 450 damage, so I felt pretty confident that the damage I was doing was pretty good, but I had one by one, the Megatheriums just started to die. And I continued to pepper the broodmother over and over and over and over. But as my numbers started to dwindle, it was fairly obvious that I was going to have to dismount and send the one megatherium that I was riding in. We just did not have the numbers to be able to finish this fight off. So I hopped off, sent him in, and from afar took on the boss on foot. Slowly but surely, methodically, we were able just to bring the health down and down and down. At the end was painful to experience, as we were just so close to making it happen. And finally, we were able to defeat the broodmother. So in the first 30 days, our first goal was accomplished. We defeated the first boss and traveled back to Green-Ob, where the war was evident with the bloody megatheriums, as they were just beat. This one had 196 health. They were in bad shape after the fight, but we did make it through. We got the Gamma Broodmother head. So the first kind of leg of this journey was complete. So after getting him off the pad, we traveled back to base with our little spider flag, put it outside the base as our trophy for winning, and off we went to the next challenge, which was the megapithecus. We tamed our theries, started to breed them, had the eggs popping out, and we were going to start the breeding process for all of our theries, because we were going to need some decent level theries, because they were going to have to be used for the megapithecus, but they were also going to have to be used for the dragon. One of the main problems with Prim Plus is there is no egg incubator and no air conditioners, so every time I placed this theory egg down, it was too cold. So I had to turn on a campfire, turn on the industrial forge, turn on the industrial grill, and then finally it was able to incubate and finally hatch out our first baby theory. We let the theories breed again, hatched another theory, and began the process of building the army for the boss fights. In the interim, we placed out a couple of crop plots, went and tamed ourselves a high-level Phiomia, built a rudimentary greenhouse, and it was just to get crops. We didn't necessarily need to get berries, but we needed rocket carrot, we needed citronal, we needed long grass, we needed savroot. We needed to have those things in order to make veggie cakes so our theries could survive the battles ahead. At this point, we had started growing up theries, but the army was building. That was a lot of the time that we needed. While those things were happening, we went out and tamed a few Rexes, got lucky, and tamed a 150 Rex and a very low level, and started bringing out eggs for that as well as backup. But what we needed from the Megapithecus was another Yudi. As our Yudi had perished, we found a level 35 here, and we didn't have time to search, so we got busy knocking it out. After it ran off, it actually luckily got stuck on a rock. We were able to knock it out just in time to get out of the way of the Carnos, kill the Carnos for the Prime, which was nice. Threw the Prime onto the Yudi and was able to tame it up and bring it back to base on the tame boat, which took forever. As you can see here, just getting the Yudi into the boat was a challenge unto itself, because we were stuck in the middle of the ice flows. So after navigating our way around the ice flows and back to base, we had our Yudi ready to go for the next boss battle. We then tried something stupid. So we thought, hey, what better way to start doing caves, especially for the cave on Carno Island, by using a Thyla. So we finally hit a Thyla, and then all of a sudden, yeah, it seemed like every Thyla on the island came to find me at once and just beat the living tar out of me, and finally just, yeah. So we abandoned that. unfortunately, when we got back to base, as our theory started to grow up, our Rex decided to do some sort of disco dance, so we had to start demolishing stone ceilings just to get the Rex out, and still wanted to do a little dance and make a little love, but we got him out of there. Then we needed to find honey easily, and we needed to find sap easily. So we went to the redwoods, built ourselves a tree platform that was in range of a couple beehives, and started placing our tree sap taps in order to be able to get those resources going quickly. We tamed ourselves a dire bear on a trap next to the wooden platform, tamed it up, and that's what we were going to use to gather the honey, because gathering it by hand wasn't going to be advantageous. We then were able to breed more and more theries and get those babies rolling. This is really what day 30 through 60 was trying to breed up theries. We found another Diplocaulus for the underwater cave that we were going to have to do, and sent the Megatherium on a ride. So we took the dinghy all the way up to Carno Island. Again, the cave on Carno Island is challenging, but we were able to utilize the Megatherium because we knew it would get the bug boost. However, getting the Megatherium into the cave was a challenge. Normally, you could just cryopod it up, throw it out when you needed it. However, it wouldn't fit, so I had to actually jump off of it and whistle it into the cave. But once we got it into the cave, it was a pretty easy go just after the first little swim. And as the Megatherium went through the cave, it just laid waste to everything. It was high enough up that it could battle the bats. Once it got the boost from killing the bugs, it was unstoppable. And on the way down, it actually jumped over a lot of the small little jumps in this cave. There are a few that are a little tricky, and it just, on the way down, just walked right over them. If you just ran with the Megatherium, it just jumped right over those little crevices, which made it pretty easy to get all the way down. Once we made it to the cave, unfortunately, it looks like it's big enough to get to the artifact, but for some reason it doesn't make it through the little opening. So I had to jump in and grab the next artifact. So the artifact of Devourer was in tow. Once we found our Megatherium, we made our way back up. So this was one of the parts that I got really lucky, as making our way down over these gaps was easy, but making our way up, it was a little tricky, but somehow the Megatherium was able to wedge in between some of these little areas, and with a little maneuvering, was able to jump back up and jump right over those little crevices and get us out of the cave. Returning to base, we had our theries growing up. We decided to make sure we got imprints on them. The more melee damage we had, the better, especially as we went to face the dragon. So we had to use every little trick in the book, make sure we got the imprints done in order to get as much damage and health as we possibly could. We then used our Quetzal and took our other tamed direwolves over to get the artifact of the pack. We called them cave fodder because we figured that they would die anyway. But into the cave we went, and there is a small opening in the cave here that you have to get through, and the direwolves just fit through that little opening, so they worked out pretty well until we ran into the Arthros, and they destroyed all my fur armor. And I was too stupid to bring extras, so I ended up just dying, which sucked. But we came back, made our way down to the bottom, and grappled our way over, rather unsuccessfully the first time. So we had to use more grapples than I would have liked to get up to the top. But we did come to the part where we could get the artifact of the pack. Unfortunately, out came the bats and gave us mega rabies. And unfortunately, they all came at the same time, and no amount of health throughs took care of that. So once again, we had to gear up and grapple over again to try and get the artifact. Knowing that those bats are there was a little trepidous. So I brought my Dimorphodon with me and sent him in to be a sacrificial lamb to hopefully distract the bats long enough for me to be able to just zip past them, grab the artifact, and come back. So we were able to zip past them, but the Dimorphodon died in about 0.5 seconds. And then we ran into a spider, which webbed us. So I had to kill that with a sword, and then here came the bats again. So Needless to say, it was a little challenging, but this time I did not get mega rabies, which was nice, and I was able to take out the bats because they were stuck on the top of the cave, so they couldn't fly away. And I was able to grab the artifact of the pack and run my butt out of that cave as quickly as possible. Back at base, we started obviously saving the crops, and we had eggs ready to hatch, so we just dropped 4 more of them right back out, hatched them up, and had another set of theries to be able to imprint on for the boss fights. We then started turning our attention to taming water dinos because we knew we'd have to go into the underwater cave. So we tamed another Diplocalus, we tamed some sharks, and we built another raft and built a very large platform and began the trek towards the water cave on the west side of the island. So we brought a few dinos with us, just enough to get us out of trouble in case we had an issue with a Diplocalus, a Megatherium, and a direwolf. We tamed a dolphin, we tamed a couple other dinos, and went in with them with one of our Diplocalus just to see what this cave was going to be like. We knew the breathing wasn't going to be a problem. With fur on, we wouldn't freeze to death. We knew we would be okay. But we decided just bring some low-level dinos with us, and of course we were met with an alpha shark right away, which was great. But we brought the dolphins with us just to see if they could distract the eels, because we knew the eels, especially in this part here, tend to come out of the ground itself, and they never have. So we made our way around, and at this point I felt pretty confident that I haven't run into a lot, so I was hoping maybe this just wasn't getting lucky with spawns. And this was where the artifact was, and we felt we were in great shape until the eels showed up. They made quick work of the Diplocalus and the dolphin, and then I was stuck because I was not smart enough to bring grapple hooks with me, and just thought I could arrow to death high-level eels, and was not meant to be. So we regrouped, brought up some more dinos, tamed ourselves a basil, and went back in with an army this time. Hopefully be able to distract the eels long enough to be able to grab the artifact and get out of Dodge as quickly as possible. Again, the alpha shark was waiting for us. And this time our kind of quick trek turned into a little more trepidous as here came more sharks. And then magically one of our dolphins survived the ordeal, found its way out without getting killed. Sadly, our basil decided to get distracted at the beginning of the cave, so we had to zip past some high-level sharks to go get it and bring it with us, because we knew at least that could take the shock of the eels, and maybe they would be distracted with the basil as much as possible. So we made our way through the underwater cave, made sure all our dinos were with us, and set forth for one more battle with the eels for the artifact of the brute. This little bridge on the right was kind of the turning point. We knew there was no going back, and unfortunately some sharks had made their way to us as well. So I sent in what I had and then went for broke, zipping past eels and sharks as they were distracted by my megalodons. Our dolphin died a very quick death to the eels, but we were able to jump off and get to the point to where we could grapple up. And we had to do all this very quickly because we weren't sure how long any of the other dinos that were battling the eels and sharks would survive. I mistimed the grapple a little bit, so I had to risk it. Armed myself with a grapple, grabbed the artifact of the brute, and grappled up as quick as I could out of the water in case the eels came. And there was another megalodon that went down, so we knew we were pressed for time, so we jumped on the Diplocalus, got a little bit of meat from a shark we killed with the musket, and took a peek around the corner, and it looked like the pain was still there, so we just decided to go for broke again and zip past all the eels and sharks, and somehow made it past them. This is one point where Ark tends to be super glitchy to your advantage, so I'm going to slow it down right here. You can see the damage numbers on the left. Right to the left, the basil never made it to the big battle. it was obviously stuck in the cave and it was not going to be savable. So I decided just to take off without it. I'm going to let this clip run just to show you how glitchy Ark can be, but at times it's glitchy in a good way. So obviously we had the artifact and we were just making our way back to base camp. It was not anything out of the ordinary. But the reason why I'm letting it play is because what happened next was nothing short of an Ark miracle. So you can see me running across the beach here, waiting patiently for my Diplocaulus to follow me because it's a water dino and it's just taking its sweet time. But we jump back in the water, ride the Diplocaulus over to where we still had some sharks growing up, and I had placed the artifact where I needed it, dropped everything off, was just getting myself organized. I know I had some megalodons left in case all went to hell. I was looking for the death note for the basil, and I didn't see it. And magically I turn around, and there he is! Somehow, the basil glitched its way out of the cave and into the water area where I was. I chalked it up to Ark, and I took it as a blessing and moved on with life. Returning to base, obviously, the Theri army was starting to take shape. There were a lot of them. My Rexes were just starting to get eggs going as well, and this is when I started to build the platform on the Quetzal to be able to transport the Theris to Blue Ob to take on the Megapithecus. So we built our little platform and then put as many Theris onto our little transport raft with our Yudi as we could. And I'll give you a little different view here. There's the Quetzal following behind our little army that could, and we headed towards Blue Ob. The transport process took forever. There is no doubt about it. You can see here I had the Quetzal on follow with the Theris on it, but we were able to get everybody there, throw the artifacts that we got in, and take on the Megapithecus. The Megapithecus is arguably the easier of the fights, but I took it second because I knew I had to get the underwater artifact, and I didn't want to take that on quickly. So after I got this Theri out of the way, I jumped on the Yudi, whistled the Theris to the back of the platform because obviously they can fall off a cliff, ran up and was going to shoot the Megapithecus to get him started, but he decided just to sniff me out pretty quick. So we got out of dodge as quickly as we could, turned back once just to make sure he was coming, and he was with all his little minions. So we headed back, gave the Theris a little bit of a jolt, and waited on the Megapithecus. We could not send them too early because they just fall right off that cliff to their death. Unfortunately, I didn't move the Yudi fast enough, and it lost half its health on one smack of rocks from the Megapithecus. But once the Theris were buffed, we sent them in, and the battle was on. Got poop thrown at me, I think, from a few of the big monkeys, but other than that, the Theris seemed to do their job pretty well against the Megapithecus. Again, we're not doing high-level dinos because we wanted to do this within the next 30 days of the challenge, but the Theris did their work, and I, again, was too stupid to move out of the way and almost killed the Theri a second time. But we were able to take down the Megapithecus, and the second leg of the journey was complete. 2 bosses down, 1 to go. There was our gorilla flag we put up at base, and we began right away, quickly, going after the artifact of the Skylord. Of all the artifacts left to get for the dragon fight, obviously this is the easiest of them. You have to take it on foot unless you take, shoulder dinos with you, or super small dinos. The musket did a pretty good job. We tried to stay clear of the bats, get them stuck on rocks, which seemed to work pretty good. We blasted them with the musket and then began the little trek all the way to the artifact of the Skylord. Normally there's bats right down here, but we got lucky that none of them spawned in, so we grabbed the artifact and grappled our way up. At least we thought we did, because then we fell down again and almost fell off into the chasm, which would have sucked. But we grappled our way up and got out of the cave without any real problems. This was now the journey for the Theris to Red Ob, and Our guy, it just looked hilarious with the boat and a Quetzal following, but we did get him. 2 red ob, built a trough to make sure that they were fed so they could survive the next, 25 plus days. And then right near the base here in Red Ob was some Sarcos, so we tamed up 2 of them and got them mating because we were going to need every single water dino that we could to try and take on the hard water cave. We also tried to birth more theories, trying to get a few more mutations so we might be able to have some stronger ones. And then we decided to take on the ice cave. So I made myself a deal in my head that I would give myself until day 70 to 75 to try and get this artifact, and if I couldn't get it, I was going to spawn it in. It was difficult. The only real thing that I did was to put on cave building, because I knew going under this first chasm with all the dinos that were here, without cave building on, I was going to get wrecked out of the gate. So I came into this cave before, threw down this spike wall. It did take out a lot of the dinos that were in there, but not all of them. So I found it weird that when I grappled up over it, I didn't see anything but fish, which was really weird. I found that if you actually shot a dire wolf and you got it near a polar bear, they started to attack each other, and then the pain and suffering would happen for them and not for me. But I didn't really understand what pain and suffering was until I spent time in this cave without some of the other high-level dinos that I'm used to bringing in. So we did throw up a spike wall and get this polar bear kind of stuck on it, and over time it did start to kill itself, but you can start to see there were more and more painful dinos waiting to kill me. This cave is very easy to grapple throughout the top of. The problem is there's so many small crevices like this one and choke points that it just made it impossible to get through without getting whacked. So as I traversed through the cave back and forth, one of the things that I found out was when you are on a grapple, you cannot use health brews. So there were multiple times that I was stuck trying to shoot multiple enemies. As you can see, there's just so many in this cave. And I had a musket, and the musket does great damage for a weapon that is primitive in its nature. It did a great job, but the problem is without high-level fur, I was freezing to death the entire time. So the musket in these high-level dinos, yes, I shot them and killed a fair amount of them, but at some point I had to take the chance and dismount and try to spam health brews and get back up. Unfortunately, it became way too much, and then I'd land, I'd hit a death. So unfortunately, there was one death,
pepperonis.
And my tribe mate was listening at the time and said, "Rest in pepperonis." So after gathering some more resources, I went back in, and again, everything you can see where the direwolf got killed by the polar bear. So I tried to use some of those strategies, but again, without the ability to use your health brews, and I was stuck in a very bad point of grapple here. I tried to keep shooting things, trying to get other things to attack it, but unfortunately, I was killed again. So the frustration started to mount over and over again. I again got there and unfortunately got a little bit too close to the ground and got Perlovia'd. And then there was a Yeti over me just beating the living crap out of me, so there was yet another death. Then I went back to get my body, got Perlovia'd again, and there was yet another death. As my tribe mate laughed at me while he watched. So I finally had to give up and spawn in the artifact. I went immediately into prepping for the swamp cave. Now the swamp cave had its own set of challenges as well because you don't have a gas mask or scuba. So you were going to get killed every few seconds by the gases in there. So I built a small base right outside the entrance to the cave as safely as I could, brought 2 megatheriums with me, and I knew that the Megatherium would be a great dino to take into the cave because of the bug buff that it gets. It would kill a lot. Problem is, the entrance to the cave is too small. So without cryopods, the only way for me to get a Megatherium into the cave was to birth one outside the cave and bring it into the cave with me and let it grow up inside the cave right after the choke point. So right here in Megatheria wouldn't be able to make it through. However, once you get past that, gave the Megatherium some berries to get started. Once you get it past this point, we would just let it grow up and fill it with berries enough to actually grow up inside the cave. So we went back, started to level up our theories. We brought a little dino over to help give it some boosts of experience, and then went back to birth another Megatherium because I figured 2 Megatheriums ought to get it done. So we got geared up, brought a Megatherium saddle with us so we'd have it ready, grapples, and some musket bullets in order to be able to take them in. And we wanted to make sure we got the imprint on the Megatherium as quickly as we could. So we let that guy grow up, gave him the cuddles, and got him to 100% imprint. Went back out and birthed another baby Megatherium. Just wiggled our way in there to claim it. And then brought that into the cave as well with us. So we'd have 2 Megatheriums with us. We waltzed him back in there as little guy ate on his way, was eating on the go, and brought him into the cave as well to grow up. At this point, the plan was foolproof. There's no doubt about it. We're going to let these guys grow up. It's going to be easy. It's going to be great. So, for backup, I brought all the dire wolves with me as well. I brought them over on the Quetzal and brought these guys in as well. It is a just-in-case insurance policy. I was going to bring as much as I could into the cave to take care of it. And I came in unprepared, of course, to feed my Megatheriums who were no longer there. I checked. There was no death messages. So my luck with art glitches saved me with the basil, but destroyed me on the raising the Megatheriums in the cave. So I decided to go for broke and just use the direwolves because there was really no way for me to get through the cave on foot. So I took the direwolves in, sent them in to kill as many bugs as they could, and off we went. And the just death messages started to fly in earnest as the direwolves took out as many bugs as they possibly could. What I didn't see was spiders and arthros. Those are usually super high level ones in here, and that was something that I didn't see, which I found odd considering that the bugs were there, the small bugs. But I chalked it up to just having luck. If my Megatheriums were dead or glitched out, at least maybe I got lucky. So I kept sending the direwolves in, and again, they went through a battle again. And then I found out another Ark miracle. Stuck in the ground at the bottom of the cave was a grown-up Megatherium. So the Ark giveth, the Ark taketh away, and then the Ark giveth again, as somehow my grown-up Megatherium glitched its way into the bottom of the cave, alive and well. So my only thing is, it must have killed all those small bugs for me. I have no idea. I wasted no time as I was low on grapples and low on health brews. I had to get the artifact in as quickly as possible, so I used my grapples to go through this little opening. And once you get to the top, you got to cut the line, and you got to crouch and walk your way up, and you can actually sneak your way to get the artifact of the immune without having to go through the rest of the cave. And this is without a gas mask, so every time I'd take damage, I'd have to spawn a few health brews just to make sure I didn't die. But we grappled our way out of the little crevice, found our other Megatherium who had glitched its way into the floor, chalked it all up to good fortune, and got out of the cave as quickly as we could. The last obstacle for us to take on the dragon was the hard water cave, and to get that artifact as well. We had raised Sarcos. All of this time that you've seen, it was raising Sarcos, raising sharks, every single dino, water dino that I could get my hands on, and we made our way over to the water cave. So I first took in a dolphin with a Lazarus chowder. My goal with the dolphin was to try and lure as many of the hard dinos out of the choke points in the hard water cave as I could, then bring in the army and hopefully swim around them. So with the Lazarus chowder, it did a great job for me to be able to breathe, but I was also on borrowed time. It also gave me a chance to look and see what was in here. And I'd swim in here with a Lazarus chowder the first time, and then came in with the dolphin, made my way around, and holy crap. This was another cave where I said, I'm going to give this a few shots, and if I can't get it, I'm going to have to spawn it in. But I felt pretty confident knowing I could kind of lure these dinos around. Wasn't getting hit at all. So I felt like, man, I could probably make my way around here. I mean, there was Tusos, there was Plezzies, there was Alphas, there was all kinds of stuff. But I feel like I successfully lured them away and swum down here, and then, boy. Then the pain and suffering began. The eels happened, the piranhas happened, and I was dead. So we brought the army with one last-ditch effort. This was going to be my only shot as we were running short on time because I wanted to make sure that we got to the dragon as quickly as we could before we ran out of time. And there was no way to raise dinos and tame as many dinos as I could to try and take this cave on. So we went in with the Diplocalus because we knew it would help us breathe, so I didn't have to worry about really rushing to do this. So I went in, whistled my dinos forward. Bit by bit, I have the speed up so you don't have to suffer through my whistling process here. But you can see the sheer volume and army I had. And after the first couple dinos taking out some donkeys, I thought, okay, I felt like we were in pretty good shape. They were taking out dinos fairly quickly, and I felt like we were in pretty good shape. Then the real battle began at the beginning of the cave. The basil went down. The second basil went down. The sarco went down. And you can see it getting shocked by cindarias and eels. And then I felt like this wasn't going well. Even with what they were able to kill, it wasn't going well, and we were losing them left and right. So I whistled to attack one last time and took the Diplocalus and went for broke, swimming on a little tadpole through the hard water cave on the island, zipping past donkeys and alpha sharks and plezzies and tusos to make my way to this little hole, and hopefully I could zip past everything, and then I got stuck on the side. But still made my way down. Felt like I was okay. Oh boy. Then it all just went south and went terrible. Everything died. I died. And there was really no hope for me to be able to get the artifact as quickly as I thought I could. So we brought in the artifact and began the process between day 81 and 85 of making as many veggie cakes as I could, with trips back and forth from the redwoods to here to gather honey and sap to make veggie cakes, just so our theories would have a chance to survive against the dragon. And then we took them in. Now this battle I knew would be the hard one. I'm actually right. I took the Uteranus and put it on auto courage and rode a Megaloceros, which seems like a crazy idea, but if all else failed, the Megaloceros could actually get underneath the dragon, and I could actually shoot off the back of the dragon, and it wouldn't hit me because it'd be so far underneath its legs that the bite wouldn't get it. So I figured that was my insurance policy against the dragon, was to have the Megaloceros with me. Of course, I got bombed a few times to start with because I wasn't paying attention. And then the Dimorphodons came, so I had to make my way around, got hit again. I'm losing. It did. The battle 1,000% did not start well. But luckily, the Theries were able to take out the Dimorphodons, and we waited for the dragon to land. And I wanted to put him on passive. I wanted to get him across the lava, and then we sent in the group. And again, was not smart and let the Uteranus go in with the group, and it didn't take long for him to die because the dragon just ate him alive. But then we began the process of just blasting away like we did with every other boss, using the Megaloceros, getting burnt, moving out of the way, using health brews. Of course, I had one Theory that decided he wasn't going to play, so we whistled him in and started blasting away with the musket. And slowly our numbers started to dwindle. And what started as slowly became a lot faster, and faster, and faster as more and more theories bit the dust. Again, if I'd used theories from the beginning, it might have been a little better, but this was the strategy I decided to go with. So then, of course, we didn't kill the dragon in time, so it flew off, so I had to pull all the theories away and wait for the dragon to land again. As they got bombed, and I got bombed by fireball after fireball, just waiting for the dragon to land one more time. This was probably the most nerve-wracking of all the boss fights, because I knew if I died here, if everybody died here, the challenge was over. I was not going to have enough time to raise all the theories and make this happen. So I had to basically take this slowly and make my way through the fight. Even if it took 3 rounds of this, it had to be. But then, of course, all the pteranodons decided to come after me because I'd whistled the theories off on passive. So the pteranodons were killing them until I whistled them to neutral. And then they started chasing everything in sight. And, of course, then the dragon's throwing his fireballs down. So it was absolutely chaotic. And I just wanted to make it through it so badly. The megapithecus was getting hammered. I most certainly did not want to take the rest of this fight on foot, as I don't think I'd be able to outrun a fireball that was coming at me. But the theories did a great job after I kind of circled them and circled them and circled them to taking out all the little smaller dinos like the dimorphodons and the pteranodons. And then we just waited for the dragon to land one last time, because I felt like it was going to be one more shot and that was going to be the end of it. We whistled the theories back over as the dragon marched across and destroyed 2 more of them right away. So this was it. This was the final shot. So I've just hoped and prayed, and more theories. Once you see that many red messages on a screen, you can pretty much guarantee you're not going to make it. When you lose that many in that period of time, the chances are just lower and lower and lower. But we stayed on the musket. We knew we had a chance with the megapithecus if everybody perished. So we just stayed on it with musket shot after musket shot after musket shot until finally, mercifully, the dragon finally went down, and I had the 3rd leg of the challenge completed. And at this point, I was so excited that I accidentally hit the Windows key and froze up the game, hence that noise right there. So I was just so excited, I slammed something on the keyboard, then lost the audio, then hit the Windows key again, trying to figure out what was going on, and finally got my bearings about me and figured out what theories were left and got back to base with everything intact except for all the deaths. The next 10 to 15 days was about trying to get every dino that I could, this mess that you see in front of you, up to the tech cave. I had all the heads with me, but without cryopods, I would have had to put every dino I could on the back of the Quetzal, and I felt like that was going to take me way longer than it was to try and just get them up the mountain. So slowly but surely, over day after day after day of trying to take group by group up the mountain through the tech cave, trying to take them in a group was not working. Again, this is where cryopods would have made life so much easier, but it didn't. So I had to take the theories, any Rexes I had, any direwolves I had, anything. I had to take them group by group up the mountain and get them in place for the tech cave. And then I had to continue to use the RG to go back and find all the dinos that I had lost in the interim, whistle them all forward, and then they battled and battled and battled every single dino that came across their path. I lost so many dinos in the trees trying to take a massive group. In retrospect, I should have taken the Quetzal and just done it little bit by little bit and built a base off the side of the cliff and made it happen. But I felt I was running out of time. But eventually, I was able to bring a fair amount of my crew to the opening of the tech cave. I also grabbed Berry Lady and brought her with us as well because that was the first dino that I tamed in this challenge, and I felt, man, what better way to at least bring Berry Lady with us? It might not end up in the cave, but I wanted to bring her along. And if all else failed and we died in the tech cave, Berry Lady and I would go out in style. So we dropped her off, and with what ragtag bunch of group dinos we had left, we geared up and opened the portal to the tech cave. Now, granted, you only have 5 minutes when this cave door opens to get all your dinos in, so I knew I was going to be hard pressed for time. So it was a matter of just bringing in as many dinos as I could before the door shut. And that almost proved to be more frustrating than anything in the entire 100-day experience, was trying to get these dinos into the cave, jumping off, because you can't bring them all at once because they're going to fall into the lava flow on the right-hand side. And you can't bring them too far down because then they're going to start initiating a fight. So I had to go up, go back, grab as many as I could, whistle them in with me. I even brought an RG with me thinking maybe, just maybe, something would help us out. But I brought them in bit by bit and piece by piece and began the march down, down, and down the tech cave to see if I could get to the Overseer. Unfortunately, the road was going to be really long and really treacherous, as mob after mob and wave after wave of dinos I know was going to come to try and kill everything and everyone that came with me. So after bringing the last little group down, we began the crazy march down the tech cave. Normally you would have dinos follow you, but I figured to put them out ahead of me, at least they could take some of the brunt of the damage, as Perlovias I knew would be able to take us out. So I felt like whistling them forward would be a little bit easier for me to control them instead of following and falling into the lava. Unfortunately, this is where the tech cave started to rear its ugly head. As we continued further and further down the cave, more dinos tried to follow dinos off the cliff. I had to constantly save them from falling down. Everything was getting killed as we moved on, and it just became more and more frustrating as we moved further and further down the cave, and just one by one and little by little, each one of my dinos bloodied up and took damage that just was not able to recover from. Our biggest fear always was the Uteranus that were in the cave, as the fear roar would most certainly take them off the cliff, running in every different direction possible, and just kill them instantly falling into the lava. So further down the cave, we felt like we had a little bit of hope as we were nearing the entrance to the cold area of the cave, but it just kept coming and coming and coming. The deaths just kept mounting and mounting and mounting. And the closer we got to the edge of the hot portion of the tech cave, I just take too much damage to too many dinos. And really the final straw for the group was this Uteranus that roared and feared out a few more of my dinos, got them killed. I did put some of these Rexes in the lava and was hoping that they would stay in there while I took on a couple Allos and I could just go at it alone with the Rex and just get to the Overseer, but I couldn't. So one Rex was all that was left, and all I had to get to the cold area of the cave was one last turn. And unfortunately, around that last turn was the Giga. Now, normally you can go across the way and shoot the Giga, and it will go into the lava, but as you can tell by the video, when I moved far away, or just far enough away, the Giga would not spawn, or would not show, so I couldn't shoot it. Dinos that were farther away, however, I could reload the musket and actually shoot them with a good shot, and actually tempt them into the lava. You can see them very far away there, and they start dropping into the lava. So, in my last-ditch effort, I snuck the Rex up as close to the edge as I could to get the Giga to come in, and pot-shot it at one time to get it into the lava, and unfortunately, it skated the edge, and here it came for my Rex and myself. So the end was near. There was no doubt about it. There was no defeating a Giga with the Rex. So I took off on foot, hoping that I shot all the smaller dinos into the lava and I could at least make it to the Overseer battle. The Rex was killed, and unfortunately waiting for me right at the edge was Barry's Arthros, chasing me down and giving me the whack of the century. I tried to see if I could make one final stand with my musket, but the reload time was too much. And I succumbed, unfortunately, which had to end the challenge. So, after respawning, we decided to take Berry Lady in alone, the first dino that I tamed in this 100-day challenge. If we were going to go out, we were going to go out in a blaze of glory. Me and Berry Lady were going to go plummet to our depths in the lava to end the challenge. Unfortunately, we could not get to the Overseer, and we could not defeat and ascend in this 100-day challenge, but I learned so much playing it in this manner, trying to beat all these bosses in such a short period of time. It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun to record it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. So I hope you enjoy Berry Lady and I running for our lives as we get feared into the lava for the very last time, chased down by everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll see you all on the next video.